Bereavement is parental bereavement, and I know firsthand of this pain after losing my baby girl Milli at just 6 days old. With no indication of complication prior to her birth, it came as a complete shock. We never got to see her eyes, we never got to hear her cry. As the weeks passed and we were riding the tsunami of grief, those around us expressed how useless they felt. They too didn't know that we felt so useless. We didn't even know what we needed. But I knew at that point that I needed to speak out. From Milli's life and death, this podcast was birthed. Little Life, Big Loss. As a safe space to talk about baby loss, grief, trauma, heartache, and hope. A safe space for lost parents to share their stories of their real-life angels. A place for our nearest and dearest to learn about our journeys and to gain a deeper understanding in how to help those who are riding the tsunami of grief. Welcome to Little Life, Big Loss. Hi there, Milli's mum here. My name is Rochelle and I am the creator and host for this podcast, Little Life, Big Loss. Whilst I hadn't planned on adding trigger warnings to the podcast, because let's be honest, our whole life and this whole podcast is one big trigger, I would like to preface a few things. Every episode I record could include any of the following: birth trauma, stillbirth, neonatal loss, termination for medical reasons, mental health, suicide, grief, and all things in and around all of this. Episodes might also mention living children, pregnancy, and pregnancy after loss. Please read the caption for a summary of what you can expect in this episode. The opinions shared by guests on my podcast are the opinions of those individuals and do not always reflect the same opinions of mine. We are not professionals, we are just lost parents sharing our story. If you hear of something that you wish to try for yourself, please seek professional guidance from a psychologist, a GP, or an OB. And finally, thank you for all the love and support that we have been receiving. I'm in love with this safe space that we have created for our babies to be spoken about in such real and raw detail. If you feel connected to an episode, please share it with someone that you think it might help. And if you would like to help our community, we have created a PayPal account, and we are asking that each time you listen to an episode, you just donate $1. If you go to PayPal and you search Little Life, Big Loss, any donations to that account will help us do so much more in this space. Thank you again so much. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to Little Life, Big Loss. I used to count the numbers and I was actually just counting before how many we've done. I think we're like 33, episode 33. And today we have Lisa with us. What a lot of people don't know is today is going to be our last interview for season 1. I never really had a plan on how many I was going to do or whether it was going to be a season or what it was going to be. But yeah, just a few things coming up. I'm going to record an episode after this with kind of like the final things and what's happening and what will happen maybe for a season 2. But yeah, so I'm so honored to have you on, Lisa. I know you're nervous. Everybody always is. But I always, I'm so honored and grateful and thankful that you trust me with your story. I know it's sometimes for people something that they've never spoken about or not often spoke about. Or certainly not in a podcast space. So thank you for being brave and coming on.
Thank you for having me, and I'm honoured that you're willing to listen to my story and hear about my boys.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So first questions first. Who was Lisa before she experienced baby loss?
I've listened to every episode, so I've actually tried to put thought, and I still don't know how to answer this. So I guess I'm not a stranger to loss. I've lost quite a lot of people in my life prior to losing my boys. So growing up in my youth, I attended a lot of funerals. But I think I was naive. I seemed to think that with everything that had already happened to me, nothing else would. So I was like, so for context, my best friend passed away in a car accident. And I was like, surely that is my worst. That is my low point. Nothing's going to happen. So when
How old were you when
lost,
you lost your best friend?
I was 19.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess I was just so naive, and was that person who was like, nothing can go wrong now because the worst has already happened.
Yeah.
Little did I know
Mm-hmm.
that was so wrong.
Mm.
So yeah, I'd say
It's so interesting you say that because I had a really awful upbringing. I had a very rough childhood, and then my 20s were pretty awful too. Like I just wasn't a great person. I was in a bad headspace. I was just, dealing with my dad was in jail, my mum was on drugs, and lots of things. And I remember getting into my 30s going, my 30s are going to be amazing because my 20s was so bad, and then I look back now at 38 and a half and think, fuck, like it's just never ending. Like when is the break coming? But yeah, so I totally understand that. And I think sometimes I read a book the other night. It's called Midnight Library, and it's about a girl who is on the verge of suicide. And she goes into this library, and it's like she gets to choose all of her life's paths. And it was a really good moment for me. When I first started reading, I thought, why has my sister recommended this? This girl's going down all these different paths. But I guess for me, I'm like, if I look back at all the hell I've been through, not that I'd ever want to lose Milli again, but I would choose this path out of all of them because, I love my husband, I love my home, and I have great support, and my mental health has always struggled throughout all my life, but it's probably the best space I've been in terms of support and love and community and all of those things. So yeah, I guess it's just still trying to find the good in the shit that we continue to go through. Wow, I actually had a friend who lost her best friend. I used to manage a gym, and there was a girl that worked there, and she lost her friend in a car accident, and watching her grieve the loss of her best friend in such a horrific way was really, really rough. So I'm so sorry you went through that, and at such a young age as well.
thanks. Yeah, to be honest, I think that has affected the way that I've grieved as well. After losing my boys, I wasn't, I guess, allowed to grieve when I did lose my best friend.
Okay.
So it was, I guess, a bit of a struggle. And I've gotten better now. It's been a long time since, but there is still moments where it's hard to.
Were you not allowed to grieve in terms of people in your life thinking it wasn't a valid thing to grieve, or?
I sort of got told, oh, get over it now. Like, you should be fine. And if I had any sort of outbursts, I was young, so I'd sort of just get real angry. And I was always told, oh, snap out of it. You're being stupid and you need to get over it. And just, yeah, that was pretty much me and that dealing with that side of things. So
I don't know if you're the same as me, but I get into rabbit holes on like Instagram pages of grief now, and I can kind of sometimes see how people must do the same in my page. I was in a rabbit hole yesterday with this girl on Instagram who lost both of her parents through suicide, and from what I can gather from her page, it's been about 7 years, and I think her mum was very mentally unwell, and the dad decided to go with the mum. Like, just wild, like true love story, but it left this daughter who has, by the looks of it, she's an only child. But I love how much she talks about being 7 years ahead of me. Loves how she talks about like there is no timeline on grief, and it's bullshit to say that we just get over it and all the other things. And I think the community that we have now on social media in grief in general, not just about babies, but gives us permission. And I think for you, like, it might be like, yeah, wow, like I don't ever have to get over the loss of my best friend in such a way. But maybe back then people were less understanding of grief. And
yeah, I think I agree. Like I look back now, and through therapy and everything, I've sort of realised that might have been difficult to be around, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't justified, I guess, in a sense. Like, it's a big thing to take on at any age. just grief in general. So, everyone deals with it differently, and I've dealt differently with the passing of my boys compared to my best friend. But yeah, it's a
roller coaster.
shitty journey, really.
Yeah. So you were no stranger to grief, that's for sure. Let's talk about your journey to becoming a mum and conceiving. When was your first pregnancy, and etc. etc.
So my first pregnancy was my pregnancy with my boys. So that was in, I always get the dates. So I found out at the end of 2021 that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So me and my partner, we've been together, it's been roughly 5 years at the time. It was the year I was turning 30. So we had sort of gone off everything contraceptive-wise and was like, oh, if it happens this year, it happens. And just like, we weren't putting in a lot of effort, but we weren't trying to prevent it either.
Gotcha.
And, it wasn't really happening. And then towards the end of the year, we were like, look, let's just get past my 30th. Once the 30th is done, we'll actually put in the effort and try. So it was, so I'm a Christmas baby, so I'm born 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
So on the 19th of December, I did a pregnancy test and we found out I was pregnant. So there goes me not being my 30th.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found out. I was so ecstatic. I told my puppies because they were the only ones home with me at the time. I had to wait 8 hours for my partner to get home before I could tell him the news. So yeah, we, I guess, didn't put in a lot of effort, and we were quite surprised that it had happened. But we were both so excited. Yeah, so that's pretty much the conceiving part.
And so
I'd like to mention.
Yeah, continue. Yeah.
I have, since I was a little girl, always wanted twins. So twins was a massive thing. I've told everyone, friends, family, I was like, I'm having twins. And the look on like my partner's face is the best, because he was like, oh, let's just stick with one and see how we go. And everyone would be like, Lisa, you can't choose. And I was like, oh, I just, that was just something I really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when we went for our first scan, completely thinking just one, like there was no expectation that there was more than one. So the sonographer, like 5 seconds after she put, I can't even think, started the ultrasound, she was like, there's two. Oh. And it was COVID times. So my partner's got a mask on, so I couldn't even see his face, which is devastating. But he didn't say anything for a while, which is the highlight of that.
Do you have twins really in your family?
One of my extended family.
Yeah.
So my immediate family, no, but I've got cousins, like second, third cousins who have twins.
Yeah.
So it does run in the family. Yeah. It does run in my partner's family as well, but more fraternal. So
yeah, because they say it comes really from the mother's line. Like if it comes from your line because it's to do with your eggs dropping it, etc. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so we found out we were having twins.
Amazing. And so what week were you at when you went for your first lot of scans and found that out?
I was about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I had irregular cycles as well. So I didn't think I was pregnant at all. And it was just when I told a friend of mine, I was like, oh, I've just been getting like these cramps. She's like, you could be pregnant. So that's what prompted me to do a test. So I was already, I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks when I did my test. And then by the time I could get a scan in because of Christmas and everything, it was pretty close to 8 or 9 weeks.
Wow.
By that point.
Wow. Okay, so being twins, they obviously when I say obviously, actually, so I've always been the same as you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love twins. I always said I wanted them in my first pregnancy because I wouldn't know how challenging pregnancy is otherwise. You don't know what it's like to have one child, so I just want two straight up. I've always said that. And then experience, and we had a miscarriage in 2021, and we always made jokes like, oh, it's because there was only one in there, and God knows we want two. So little did I know 2024 we'd still be trying. But it wasn't until I've experienced losing Milli and interviewing people and the world of loss that I've realized how high risk twin pregnancies actually are. I think we always just see the cute little double kids and they're matching outfits and all the rest of it, but we don't actually think of the implications of that. So what happens when you go to a scan and you find out that you've got twins? What then happens after that?
So for me, they were just like, you'll just come in for more scans. They did tell me it'd be high risk pregnancy. So I'm really bad with the correct terminology, but I think it's called, I'm going to say it wrong. Anyway, I'm going to just say it. It's like Momo die or something. So we had one placenta, two sacs. So we were lesser risk, but still high risk being, so the fact that there was the two separate sacs was,
so
I
two
think
separate
took away
sacs
a bit of
is
risk.
good, but obviously, like, just from what I'm thinking is one placenta isn't going to give as much nutrients to two babies.
What they sort of told me the biggest risk was that with one placenta, the one baby could take all the nutrients and not leave enough for the other, meaning one wasn't going to survive because of just it's not getting what it needed. So basically, for it to go smoothly, they needed to share, essentially. Sure. And that's pretty much the main thing I took from everything early stages. I was like, they need to share. Like that's what we need to do. So yeah, I basically had scans every 2 weeks, just to monitor their growth, make sure that they were sharing, sort of, just more scans. And that was pretty much, like, I was still very, I guess, I didn't really look into the risks. I was very much like, they'll tell me at scans, like, it'll be fine. And that's pretty much what I went in with. Yeah. For every scan. I was originally going to see a private obstetrician, but we didn't have health insurance to cover private, so we were planning on going out of pocket. Yeah. But then you see the costs when it comes to all the extra stuff. So for twins, it wasn't really great on the budget. So
expensive. Especially with the risk of especially with the risk of them potentially coming earlier and having to use NICU if they did, etc. Because, like, I know with Milli, it was so expensive to have her in NICU. We were privately funded, but I've seen the invoices that Bupa got, and so then, and it says very clearly on our letters from our OB before we even birthed her, like, if a baby goes to NICU, this is the cost, like $1,600 per day. And that just doubles for twins. So, like, it's an astronomical amount of money, especially if something goes wrong.
And then they also want double the amount of specialists in the room. So, like, you'd need 2 pediatricians.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was sort of like not going to be good because we were aware that there was the chance of obviously a NICU stay. So it was like that would just not be great.
Yeah, and the public system is fine. I used to not say those things, but, I've soon to learn that private's not everything.
I think for me, the only reason I wanted to do private was I like the idea of having your partner stay with you. That was pretty much my whole thing. I was like, oh, yeah, it'd be nice to have him with me overnight and having 2 as well. be pretty full on. But
Yeah.
we opted to go back into the. So I started seeing private, and then we were in the process of switching back to the public system. Sort of when everything went wrong for us.
Yeah.
So I didn't see an obstetrician, but I saw a specialist doctor. And then she organised all of my scans through a specialist clinic. Yeah. So that was
And so at what point
the.
did they indicate that something might have been wrong?
So they never did. So there was never any issues with my scans. So I went for a scan when I was 22 weeks.
Yeah.
And up until then, they were both growing. They were both approximately the same size, sharing. There was no reasons for concern at all. My last scan, now looking back on it, even sort of in the hospital, me and my partner were just furious. So we were at a specialty clinic that only do ultrasounds for babies. And we always had this lovely lady. She saw us every time. She put in effort. She got amazing photos. She was just fabulous. So our last scan, when we went in, we didn't actually get the normal sonographer. We got the doctor. So with twins, you get a double amount of time for your scan. So if your scan usually takes half an hour, we'd get an hour, and so on.
Yeah.
So our last scan, the doctor had to leave the room. I think she left twice to go check other scans, and we were in and out in like half an hour. She took, I think we got like 3 photos. She was just pretty blunt and was like, "Yep, you're all good. You can leave." So we didn't think anything was wrong. We were like, "Oh, fingers crossed we don't get her next time," because we didn't really like the service.
Yeah.
So we went home, and everything was going pretty good for us. And then, so it was over Easter. So Easter Sunday, I had woken up and I was just getting like really mild period cramps.
Yeah.
And I could walk, I could talk, like there was not a single thing to indicate there was any issues or anything wrong. So it'd been on and off, and it wasn't getting worse, it was just there. And we had family over, and they were like, "Oh, you should just go to the hospital just to get checked out." And because I wasn't seeing, hadn't been in the public system yet, I went to the hospital I was meant to go to, but I had to go to emergency because I didn't have any numbers or anyone to call. And I got there. They saw me pretty quickly. They took me straight up to the birthing suites to be checked out, because it was sort of COVID times, or still short-staffed everywhere. It took a while for the doctor to come in to see me. And whilst I was waiting, so I think it was about 4 hours, the pain went, like they were asking me questions. I had to do sample, and I was like, "Oh, no, I feel fine. Like I feel great." And the midwife had actually said, "It sounds like it's just Braxton Hicks." So she goes, "We'll just get the doctor to come in and check, and then you'll be able to go." So, like, my partner was at work, so I'm messaging him like, "Yeah, all is good. I heard someone giving birth," and I was like, "I can hear someone giving birth. That's going to be us in a few months." Like, all this like excitement was sort of settling in. And then the doctor came in, and he had sort of said, like, "Can I just do an exam?" I was like, "No worries." So he did an exam, and he was like, "Oh, so you're up here." And so he kind of said it as like, "Oh, you're 3 centimeters." And I assumed that was dilated. So basically at that point it was like, you could, like, delivery is possible soon. So, like, there was nothing to sort of indicate that I guess, started to go into labour. And I was very much like, I'm not in labour. I'm just cramping. Everything's going to be fine. Like, refused to accept anything. I had to call my partner. He left work, came straight to the hospital, come up to see me. And I can't remember at what time, but at some point that night, like, contractions had started and I was in immense pain. Like, it was...
So just out of nowhere, like, you were just at home, everything was normal, you'd had a scan. How long earlier was the scan?
So I had a scan on a Thursday and I was in hospital on Sunday.
And so did they check your cervix or anything at that scan? Like had your cervix started opening or anything?
The doctor said cervix looks fine to us, and that was it. I requested a report from that scan, and nowhere on the scan says anything about my cervix. So I don't think it was checked. I think she just did a quick little, everything's fine. And just, it was, for me personally, I think it was just about the money, like, come in, get a scan, give us money. Yeah.
And so in this, like, so obviously the doctor's come in, he said you're 3 centimeters. Did they have a conversation with you about what is about to unfold and what this is going to look like? Because you were only 22 weeks.
It was 22 and 3 by that point.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know if they really did have a conversation with me in depth, because I think I went into a bit of panic then. I was like, like, what does that mean? And
is there a chance?
They were sort of like,
like, do they give you a chance of survival rate at this point, or it's just, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there should have been a conversation of, like, what is happening.
We did end up having there was a conversation eventually. So they said viability at this stage is 23 weeks. So they did say they needed to check dates to make sure my dates were correct, because if, like, one day off mattered. So I was 22 and 3, and when they checked, they were like, that's it. So they were like, you need to get to 23 weeks. There's nothing we can do for you unless you get to 23 weeks. So we had this, like, try to get to 23 weeks. And the hospital we were at couldn't accommodate babies at that gestation either. So we had to move hospital as well as get to 23 weeks. And
but you were in labour, or
I was contracting.
Yeah.
I was going through all that. My waters hadn't broken. I was just in pain. I don't remember them really checking too much, but they were sort of like, there's a possibility you'll deliver soon, but there was also a possibility that we wouldn't. So it was...
So you said you're...
a little bit of...
Oh my gosh, I've just made my lap wound bleed. Sorry. I just remember, I was like, oh, my stomach's hurting. So you said your partner arrived, and by this point your contractions had started. Could they give you an option? And I'm just going by things that I've learned over the podcast. I actually don't know if these things are possible, but, like, was there an option of a stitch, or it's too late by this point?
I don't think they ever brought it up, and I think I think I thought of it. I can't remember if they mentioned it, but I sort of was like, is there anything they could do? And I'm pretty sure they said there's not really anything they could do.
Yeah.
So later on, I did think, like, could I have gotten a stitch? Like, was there things they could have done? But they sort of just offered me pain medication. They offered me an epidural, but I was in denial so much that I was like, no, epidurals for pregnancy, like delivery. I'm not giving birth. Like, I'm just in pain. I'm just cramping. That's it. Like,
And
leave
so,
it with me. So
yeah, leave it with, come back to me later. And so then they moved hospitals, so they couldn't accommodate premier twins at this hospital, so they've offered to move you.
no. So because they couldn't accommodate twins, and so King Eddie's in Perth is pretty much the place to be if you're going to have a sick baby or a preemie baby. They're sort of, I guess, one of the best in the world from what I've been told. They weren't willing to accept me because they couldn't save my babies at this gestation. So we were told basically I would be there and the doctors would continuously keep talking until something happened, basically. We did have doctors that work at King Eddie's as well come into this hospital, so there was some there, which I think ultimately sort of helped us in the end. But yeah, we pretty much got until about 3 o'clock Monday morning, me going through contractions, just dealing with the cramps. And then they told me they were going to move me to a maternity ward and that my partner had to leave. So he had left, I was moved, and they were like, just call us, like push the nurse button if your waters break. And I'm like, what is that? Like, I don't know what that is. And they were like, oh, just, it could be a trickle, it could be a gush. Like, you'll know, you just call us. So I'd got there sort of, early morning and struggling to sleep. And I did get some pain medication and it sort of helped a little bit. So I thought I might have been able to fall asleep. And sort of just as I did sort of doze off, one of my waters broke. So I had a massive gush. I was like, yeah, this isn't good. Called the nurses, pretty much broke down in tears. Pretty much got off the bed. I sat on the toilet and they cleared the bed and then basically put me back, tidied me up because I was in trackies and everything. So everything had to be like removed and replaced. And they were like, we're going to take you back up to the birthing suite now. So this is Monday morning. Called my partner. He'd probably had maybe 2 hours sleep. He was back at the hospital and they were pretty much like, we won't move you from here now. Like, you'll stay here. We did have a doctor come in and she was sort of like, we'll probably end up delivering today, which just broke me because I was like, no, we're trying to hold on. Like, we're only 22 and 4 now. So we've got a few more days to go.
So they won't even attempt to help revive or keep alive or look after the babies if they have not made it to 23 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah. So they basically said they need a cutoff date. Otherwise, it's going to continuously get low and they're not going to have any ability to actually save. So they said 23 is the cutoff. So basically midnight between of the day that you're here, 3, that's when they will actively do whatever they can to save your child. So so Monday pretty much was just the whole day they were monitoring me and I was just, going through all the labour pains, being given bits and pieces of medication. Most of it didn't work. My partner was there. They brought in a couch for him to sleep on so he didn't have to leave. And we had some of the nicest midwives. Like, they were just so lovely. So basically that was Monday. I just basically laid in bed the whole day.
So was that Easter Monday?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was meant to go to work, obviously, and I had just started a new job when just before I found out I was pregnant. So I didn't have most of contact details. My direct boss had gone on an international holiday. Her boss had gone on a holiday. So I actually had no idea who to call to say, oh, by the way, I'm not going to come into work. So I had to look up all of my new starter notes to
Yeah.
find numbers to contact admin to get the project director's number so I could call him and tell him that I wasn't coming in.
Oh my God.
So that all had to happen on that Monday as well. So yeah, it was.
The things we don't think of, right? Like, life is still going on outside of that hospital, and you're
Yeah,
experiencing the most horrific time of your life, and yet you've got to call someone and say, "Oh, I'm not coming to work."
yeah. So yeah, Monday was pretty much just on repeat. We had doctors coming in. So like midwives checking me. I forgot how often. I think it was like either hourly or every few hours they would come in and have to check on everything. So they were worried that I was getting a bit of an infection.
Okay.
So they were monitoring my temperature and everything just to sort of keep that or make sure nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And I do remember at one point they said, "Oh, we're a bit worried, like your temperature's a bit high." But then I'm pretty sure they came back in and said, "Oh, you've gone down, like temperature's all good." So we just carried on Monday, and then made it to Tuesday.
Wow.
So Tuesday morning they came in and they'd scheduled me for an ultrasound. So we'd gone down to the ultrasound place in the hospital, and they were like, "We need you to empty your bladder." I was like, "I can't." I was like, "I can't try to even push anything out if it's not going to drain itself. It's not happening." So they could only scan one of the twins. So because they had separate sacs, only one of the waters broke.
Yeah.
So they could scan one, but they couldn't really scan the other. But both boys we didn't know they were boys at the time, but both boys were still alive.
Wow.
And so they were just there, and we were 22 and 5 at this stage. So we were told we needed to have steroid injections and vitamin K injections, all to sort of help when the boys came out, that they would have, I guess, protection against cerebral palsy, and, just to try and give them the best opportunity to have as less, I guess, disability as possible. And they did sort of say this would be done in the lead up to 23 days. Sorry, 23 weeks.
Yeah.
But it would be done like a certain time frame beforehand to get to the time, like getting to 23 weeks.
So they were going to inject that into you for the boys? Is that like...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I had... they gave me one of the injections. I think it was the steroid injection at the hospital. And then not long after... just before that, the midwife... So the last one I had at this point, she was just... I was like, am I going to deliver? She's like, there's a chance that you won't. Like, you may get to 23. She was just so great. And she'd actually gone out... and she came back and she was like, "I've got some good news." And I was like, "What's that?" And she's like, "We're going to give you a steroid injection." I was like, "Oh, great. Like, this is progress." And she goes, "And we're going to take you to King Eddie's. Like, King Eddie's are going to take you. We're going to take you now." So basically I got the injection, and then within probably a couple of hours, I was being loaded into an ambulance and I was on my way to King Eddie's. So it was sort of like, our whole goal was like, we need to make it to 23 weeks. We need to make it to King Eddie's. Like, we've made it to King Eddie's. Now we've just got to make it to 23 weeks. So this is all on the Tuesday. So we were 23 weeks, 5 days. And I think, like, looking back now, I realize the ambulance ride was when something was wrong. So I got in the ambulance and I was just so hot. Like, it was ridiculously hot. Like, I was like, I'm so warm. Like, why is it so hot in here? And they're like, "Oh, we're really sorry. Like, the aircon's not working." But I was like, I'm just so warm. and the midwife's fanning me with her clipboard. But I just, looking back now, I'm like, that wasn't a good sign. So I'd gotten to King Eddie's, been taken up to their birthing suite, and my partner Brad, he had to drive and meet us there, and then he sort of came in, and then all these doctors came in and they were like, oh, we just, got to do some checks. And this was the moment that it all became really clear to me that it was not looking really good. So basically, like, if you've ever Googled, like, what your discharge should look like and all of that sort of stuff, you'll see that it says, like, if it's green, it's not good. So they had actually, like, I had sort of a pad on the whole time, and when they took it away, it was green. And they were like, this is an infection.
I was going to say, I've never even heard of that.
So they were basically like, you have an infection, it's not good. They were like, because you're pregnant, it's bad for you, and you could die. So we're sort of there, I'm still cramping or contracting, and we're told basically if we don't deliver, then we pretty much all potentially will die. They gave us statistics on if we were to make it to 23 weeks, it was, I think, a 70% chance of a disability for both boys. And it sort of went down each week. So every week that passed was such a dramatic improvement. So we were basically given the news that I was unwell, really unwell, and could die. The boys still hadn't made it to 23 weeks, and if we were to make it that far and everything still be somewhat okay, they may be born, they may not survive, and if they do survive, they would most likely be severely disabled. So I guess at this point, it was, I think for me, I was like, if my partner wasn't there, in a sense, like if I didn't care about him, I would have just been like, I don't care about me, like just save my boys, that was it. But it got to the point that I was like, if we do nothing and I die and the boys die, then my partner's got to bury or, organise a funeral for 3 people, not just 2. Like he'll have family, he'll have a support system, but like when you lose a child, you need a person, like your person, like someone who understands your grief. And it's like, I won't be there for him either. Like, so it kind of got to that point where they were like, we strongly recommend that you deliver and so we can treat you. And they gave us a bit of time. So they gave us, I couldn't tell you how long, but I think it was like maybe an hour. And we sort of talked about it, and it was sort of, in my mind, I was like, but the boys still might survive. Like they may come out and they may, so we'd been told that if any child is born and they take a breath, they have to give CPR. Like they can't not do it.
Well, that's why when you were saying, like, they have to get to 23 weeks, I just thought, how? Like, imagine being a doctor and if they're born at 22 plus 6 and they come out, they'd refuse to help them. Like, I didn't understand. So if they take a breath, they have to help them, but the likelihood of them taking
it. So they basically said if they take a breath, they legally have to do CPR. But if no breath is taken, they don't have to do anything.
Wow.
So this is sort of Tuesday evening, and I guess, like, I still hate that we had to make that decision, but we did decide to, I guess, deliver because.
I mean, I don't think you had a choice. You were, by the sounds of it, you were in labour and delivering anytime soon anyway.
I think for me, I'm like, it feels like it was a choice that we had to make, and it feels sometimes like we chose me over them, which sucks because that would not have been the case. Like if I knew they would have survived, I wouldn't have cared.
Of course.
But I just couldn't put my partner through losing all three.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting, I guess, agreeing to deliver.
Yeah.
And so I was given an epidural at that point. And then I'm pretty sure they had given me some stuff to bring on labour as well, because I don't think it was like I wasn't actively I was going through the motions, but I wasn't at that,
So
push stage or anything like that.
Introduce the labour.
Yeah. So yeah, we started that, and once again, first pregnancy, so I didn't know what to expect or what to do. So they sort of just said, you'll just feel a bit of pressure and you just sort of push, and I didn't really feel anything. I just sort of was like, oh, okay, I'll just do a little push. And it was at that point, so my boys, so the way they were, so Archie was pretty much like head down, ready, and Cooper was like still tucked up really high in his little sack, just chilling.
Yeah.
So he sort of had I guess there was no distress for him at all. Like he sort of stayed where he was. And then so it was just past 7 p.m. Archie was born. And so we did actually say to the doctors, they did ask us if we wanted them to do anything. And I responded and I said, if you think that there is a chance or anything you could do, I want you to do it. But I believe you're the professional, so you'll know. And so when Archie was born, they took him over to the table, and the pediatrician was there. Brad got to go over and stand with them, and he didn't say anything directly to me. It was a bit away from me, but I'm pretty sure he turned around to Brad and was like, there's nothing we can do. And he's not breathing. He's alive, but not breathing. So it was like at that point that I guess they sort of wrapped him up a bit. And I can't remember if I think Brad held him for a little bit and then he brought him over to me. And in that time, like, we didn't know what we were having. So I was like, what did we have? Like, what have we got? And they were like, oh, boy, like, you're having a boy. You've had a boy. And being identical, they can't be different genders.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you know?
Stage, I was like, oh, I wonder if the other one will be a boy. Like, that's sort of, I guess, one of the positives we took from the, I guess, shitty situation was we found out that we had boys, and my stupid comment. So we held Archie, and he lived for about 8 minutes before he passed away.
Wow.
And then because Cooper was so high up still, they had to do all this stuff to try and bring him down. They had to break my water. So they did pop my water, and I was like, be prepared. And they were like, oh, it's okay. And then just fluid went everywhere and like just saturated the doctors. I was like, I told you.
I thought, and is this why, because you said earlier, like, how that one of your waters broke. How long did they leave you from when your waters broke? Because I thought, I don't know, that there was only a certain amount of time you could be in labour, or that you could have not birthed the baby from when your waters break. Is that a thing? Like, because you're at high risk of infection?
Told me that. They never told me anything like that. But Archie's water broke probably about 6 a.m. Monday, and this was about 7. Well, and then I gave birth about 7 p.m. Tuesday. So
I would say that's why you had the infection. That's not that's a non-medical opinion, but I thought that once your waters break, you only have a certain amount of time because of risk of infection.
I have heard that, but I don't know, and they don't know when the infection started either. They couldn't tell me if it was before or after.
Okay.
The waters broke. They just don't know. So
they
it was just
broke the waters for Cooper.
Yeah, and then they had to sort of pull him out, and he was taken over to the pediatrician, checked. Same thing. Sorry, we can't do anything. And me and Brad got to hold him. I felt a bit sick at this point, so Brad held him the longest. And so Cooper lived for approximately 30 minutes before he passed away. And then sort of, it all kind of happened within an hour for us. We gave birth and then both the boys had passed away.
Wow. It is so horrific. And you said something before that brought tears to my eyes straight away, and I think it was when you said like that it was the two boys and you didn't know that they were boys, but the decision, like when you were so close, you were 22.5, and it's just like knowing that you had 2 days to make it to 23, but then the risks are still there, and then you get an infection, so the risk is on you, and then having to make that decision, and then Brad not having anyone, and like there's just so much complexity in all of that.
Yeah, it was, I guess, when we sort of got told all of the risks with twins, the last thing was, oh, you'll deliver premature because you get an infection. Like, to be honest, they didn't really even bring up premature birth that much. Or it was never, it would be extreme. It was always, oh, they may be in the NICU. Yeah. So, like, we never really got that feeling that this would happen. And, I mean, up until this did happen to us, I didn't know what the age was where they would actively try to save a baby. So, and then to be, like, 2 days shy, it hurt so much because it was like they were so close. It was like, and then with the scan not being done so soon before this all happened, it was like, why wasn't it picked up? If it was picked up, we could have potentially got a stitch. We could have put me on bed rest. We could have done anything, and I could have got another week, maybe 2. And the outcome may have still been the same, but the chances were better. So that was pretty hard to sort of accept.
I just remembered what made me cry when you said that on the Tuesday, was it the Tuesday you had a scan and both the boys were still alive, and it's like 22 plus 5, they're like little tiny humans, and they've got all of their limbs and all of the things, and they're just in there all snugly and safe, and then it's like, but then all of this hell is about to break out, and I just like imagine them like, ugh.
It's like I always think that Archie knew what was happening, and that's why his water broke. I feel he took everything to try and save Cooper. So I like to think he's like my little, like, strong warrior who tried to protect his brother and was willing to take the bad outcome so that Cooper had a chance.
It's so fucked up. It's really shit. And so, and the other thing that I think of more so now is like how much pain you must have, like, you had an infection and you're birthing babies and you're birthing placenta and you're like thinking about what your actual physical body went through is actually horrific.
The birthing part, because I was so small, and obviously I realised this later on after I had my daughter, but the birthing part wasn't like, that was mentally hard, but it wasn't physically hard. But the contractions and my denial, so I didn't want to take all the pain medications. I just wanted to get through it all. Like, that was pretty exhausting. And I remember sort of feeling pretty defeated on the day when they told me that there was the infection, that I was just like, I've tried so hard and it didn't work. Like, it was really hard.
And I think also the hope, like you were getting transferred to this hospital, like it's like, oh my gosh. And like I know we had similar with Milli on the Wednesday where we had our most hopeful day the day before we lost her. And it was like, oh, like we thought we were coming home and then we lost her. And I was just chatting to a girl the other day. She reached out to me on Instagram and they had their little baby in hospital for 8 weeks. And they thought they were bringing him home and then he died that day. And it's like, we get this hope, but it's almost just like it makes the crash so much worse. You know, you were in the ambulance being transferred to this hospital that you really wanted to get to, and then it's fucked. It's so shit.
And I don't think at any time up until like the hour or two before birthing, I was like, they're going to survive. Like, I am going to make sure that they survive. I'm going to do everything I can. So yeah, when it sort of hit those, I guess, hours where I could see the infection, and I was just like, oh, I failed, like it hasn't worked. And I was like, there is nothing I can do. And it just
so,
sort of,
yeah.
It just sort of felt like, yeah, I can't even explain like how crappy that made me feel. It was just like, we were close. We had injections. Like I'd gotten the first vitamin K put into a drip as well. So I was getting that. And then it was just like, oh yeah, no, this isn't going to work. So.
And like even like you were saying before, like you felt like you had to make that decision and that you guys chose you over the babies. So I feel like just from listening to you, it sounds like you're saying like, you know, you felt like you failed, you felt like you didn't get there, it felt like you had to make that decision, but like you did all that you could to get to where you did. Like there was nothing more that you could have physically done. And most people don't know, but the hospitals will always choose to save mum over babies because, you know.
Yeah, for a long time after, I was like, I hate my body. My body's like failed me. I was angry at myself. I still have days where I'm like, I could be with them right now. Like if I had changed my decision on like really hard days. It still haunts me, but I think there's been a little bit more acceptance around the decision and knowing that if I could have done anything that would have guaranteed them to be here, that is what I would have done. I wouldn't have chosen anything. But I couldn't guarantee that. And I couldn't put my partner through that. Like, it's hard losing your children, but then to just lose everyone. Like, you know, if he got the boys, that would have been fine by me, but he's going to go home by himself. And I can't imagine, like, my partners are happy, just doesn't get affected by things very easily. So it was sort of like, I didn't know if he would cope without anyone, basically.
Yeah.
So it was
who could cope with that, you know, like it's such a horrific thing to even consider what would happen.
Yeah.
And have you, so this was April March or April? It was Easter.
April.
April 2021?
Yeah, it was April 22.
Oh, April 22. And so what kind of support did you guys have? Like, firstly, how like, so did you spend time with the boys? What kind of happened in the labor room once you delivered the boys?
So after delivering the boys, they actually had issues getting my placenta out. So I had to go to surgery. So they had told my partner that it wouldn't be long. I think they had said maybe like an hour or two max. And I was away for a lot longer than that. I remember I was awake while they did everything, and I was just like, hurry up, get me out of here. And then they took me to like recovery, and I was like, why am I here? Just take me back to the room. I don't want to be here. So then when I finally got back into the room, one of the midwives had dressed the boys and brought in a cuddle cot. So they were in there, and Brad was there as well. And they were like, I had to stay in anyway because of the infection.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly how long. I think we may have been there for about 5 days, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit like 4 or 5 days. So we got that time, and we pretty much had the boys in with us the whole time. Like we didn't have them really leave the room. I didn't leave the room at all. My partner did. So I had my mum come in, and because of COVID, my partner had to leave for anyone to come in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So my mum was able to come in, and she met the boys. And then when she left, Brad got to come back into the room, and we sort of weren't able to, like, I couldn't leave, and we didn't really want to just bring in all Brad's family, and Brad couldn't be there.
Yeah.
So it was like a really tough decision, but we didn't really have anyone else come into the room with us.
Yeah.
After we were discharged, we were able to go and see the boys at the perinatal pathology.
Okay.
And they were the same, like only 2 people at a time, but I was able to obviously not be in the room. So we had Brad go in with his parents, and I mean, we were sneaky. We let all 3 go in because you don't get monitored anyway.
Yeah.
So we were lucky enough to have family be able to come in and see the boys.
Yeah.
We had
was
sort
that
of
like a part of the hospital? Was that like a room in the hospital or something? Or
it's sort of like on the outside of the hospital. So okay. I guess I'm assuming
hold on, I just need to let my dog in the room because he's scratching at the door. Hold on. I don't know if you can hear it, so I was like, I just need to get it. Hold on. Vicky. Okay. Oh, I'm going to chip it. Sorry. Come on, Uppy.
That's okay.
He's got anxiety. So they took it. So it's called NICU pathology, neonatal.
So it's perinatal pathology. So I'm assuming it's like basically, I don't know. It must be connected to the morgue in Subway.
Sure.
But yeah, so we were able to go down there, and I'd sort of asked them because I'd found out about heartfelt. I can't remember how, but I had. And I was like, how can we get photos if only 2 people are allowed in the room? Like, can we have 3 so we can have a photographer? Yeah. And they were like, we can't bend the rules. Oh. And I was like, okay. So I was pretty devastated because I was like, how are we going to do anything? And then they were like, but you can take them home. You can take the boys home. And I was like, yes, 100% yes. So we had to get documentation signed and everything, but we got to bring the boys home.
Oh,
so I got to introduce them to our puppies, and we had I basically said to anyone in the family and friends who wanted to, were more than welcome to come. And we had most, not all, but we had most. And we had Heartfelt come out. And we took photos of everyone with the boys. Heartfelt took photos. So we've got those. But it kind of, I wasn't really in a I'm ready to let go stage, because I would be going to visit them daily. Like I went in every day, and if we missed a day, I was like, I feel like the worst parent, and you couldn't go in on weekends. And then the lady at perinatal, she actually said, I think you need to consider like stop coming. And you probably need to get on with like funeral arrangements. I mean, she said it nicely, but at the time I was really taken aback. But yeah, basically I don't think I was letting go in a sense. And I was just like, but I could go and still see them, and until everything's organised, I can do that. But they were like, the deterioration was happening. And so
how long had this been
after that,
by this point?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks since we got out of hospital. Maybe a bit longer. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So sort of at that point I guess me so much, like more so, was like, okay, I think I need to stop going, because like they mean it in a nice way. And so we stopped after that conversation. And then we sort of had organised the boys' funeral by that point. And
were the boys cremated or were they buried?
They were cremated. So they were cremated. We had a lovely lady who sort of helped us with everything. She was just so beautiful. Like, we'd called places and I was like, it has to be the right people. And some felt just wrong and others felt pushy. And this lady was just so lovely. And she hadn't experienced it herself, but she was just lovely. So, yeah.
It makes such a big difference, huh? Like it's an industry that would take a very special person to work in, but I think sometimes they still get it wrong, and for somebody that hasn't experienced it, but I'm sure she's witnessed many, many funerals, more for babies than we realise. Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah.
I actually love when I hear that people like took their babies home or spent more time with them or did those things, because there's no right or wrong way to do it, and we were the opposite. We were too scared to bring Milli home, and hold on, now my other dog is crying. This is why I went to a podcast studio for a while. Yes, sweetheart. She's the naughty one. They'll probably wrestle now. Lucky you have dogs and understand. We were the opposite, I guess. For us, we'd spent 6 days in hospital with Milli, so by the time she had passed away, we probably only spent an hour and a half with her and then left. And I think, not that it's a regret, because we didn't know any different, we didn't know what to expect, and it was shock. But when I hear that somebody spent so much time after, like, I just go, oh yes, like, there's already so many regrets around for yourself, even, regrets on or guilt and all of those things. So I think it's beautiful that you spend so much time with the boys after, like, even though, it was too long in their eyes and, they told you to stop, that I just think as if for you, like, you were just showing like you just never wanted to leave them.
Yeah, it's sort of, I guess for me, I was like, this, once I stop, that's it. I won't see them again. So it was very much about, I guess, trying to remember everything, like, about them that I couldn't get from a photo. And I guess I just felt every time I saw them, I just told them how much I love them. And yeah, for me, I just felt like I had to, like, that was all I would get as being a mum. Like, that was all I got to do for them, that I just, it's like, I'll give up my day to come and see them and spend time with them.
Yeah. And they knew that. I believe they're there and they still feel it. And, you know, I don't know if you saw the book, the ebook that I just launched the other week, but I put in like a talk about the parents speaking to the souls. And I didn't realize that I was trying to be as inclusive as possible in the book. But somebody said, oh, not everyone believes in souls. And I'm like, oh. Like, I find that so strange, because for me, I'm like, I picture you there talking to your boys, and like their souls are just like, Mummy, like, we hear you, like they would have felt your love, and they would, you know, all of that so much.
Yeah, I think I don't know what they are now, but I'm like, I feel that there's something somewhere, and they'll hear what I say, and I'm like, they're always with Auntie Beck. So like, like to think that, my best friend's watching them for me, and
And so I always like to talk about, like, you know, support afterwards and things like that, but we've talked about that a lot in different podcasts. Something that I don't get to talk about all the time, and I want to ask you about, is what was pregnant. So you've gone on to have your daughter now, and so how long after losing the boys did you fall pregnant, and what was pregnancy like after loss?
So I was very much like, and I think the last podcast was the same, very much like, I don't want to replace the boys, but I need a baby. Like, I need to have a successful pregnancy. I need to have a baby. I need that distraction, I guess. So I was very much like, let's get in and get it done. So we tried as soon as my period returned, which is about, I think, the second month. And didn't happen. And I'd had a regular period, so I'd gone in to see a GP, and she was like, oh, you might have polycystic ovaries. So that was just like, at that point in time, I was like, I don't need to hear that. Like, I just want a baby. Like, don't tell me negative things. It's like, what can I do? But turns out I didn't. And so she was like, just try more, like every second day for a long, like, so that's what we did. And then, I had taken tests and they'd come back negative, and I was like, okay, well, it didn't work that time, and just sort of got to the shops, and I felt a bit dizzy. So I came home and I did a test and it came back positive. So then, we were pregnant. I think pregnancy was hard, but it was a single pregnancy. So there was only one. So I already knew the risks had already dropped from obviously twins. And I guess I was aware of all the other ways that you can lose a baby, not just, I guess, unfortunate you got an infection, like all of the other ways, because I'd basically been down every rabbit hole, like tried to find all these people who I could connect with, that I knew all the ways, but my goal was still just to make it past 23 weeks. That was like, that's my ultimate goal. And then I feel like I dealt with it pretty well. I feel like I was still pretty relaxed. I had moments where I was like, don't tell me not to stress, because this is a stressful thing once you've lost a child. But I made it through most of the pregnancy, I think, going, I probably can't stop anything bad happening. So I've just got to be like, maybe at the end there will be a baby and it'll be great. So I decided, I didn't want to know the gender, because if something did go bad, I wanted that, I guess, moment of joy when you find out the gender. So we didn't know the whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
She was a preemie as well. So when I got to, she wasn't a micro prem though. She was just shy. So
Which is how many weeks?
34 weeks.
Yeah.
So she was measuring really big. So I'd been told sort of from my 30. So I had been put on, there's a specialty clinic in King Eddie's called the preterm birth clinic. And basically I saw them and they would scare me as often as I wanted. So if I wanted to see them weekly, they would do it. I opted for fortnightly. So I had fortnightly scans with her as well. And then we got to like the 30, 32 weeks, and they were like, if we were to deliver your baby today, we would feel very strongly about her outcome. Like we would not be worried.
Yeah.
So, I got to 34 weeks and spontaneous labor, went to hospital, and she was born with no complications. So
I was going to say, so did they have to put her into NICU, or she was?
She did go into the NICU, so she was in the NICU for 2 weeks. So they won't release a baby until they hit like the 36-week gestation. So she needed a bit of help breathing, so lungs hadn't fully developed, and she had I can't even think of the word, a bit of jaundice, which she wasn't able to break down like a full-term baby would. So she had little bits and pieces, and she had to sort of get the strength to feed and do all of those things.
What was it like? What was it like going into labour again? Like, obviously you were so much further along, so you would have had like, more glimmers of hope, but was it still scary going in and knowing that she was still that little bit of preemie?
I think I wasn't that worried, because I'd been reassured so much prior that if she comes, she will be fine. She was measuring really big, so they were also telling me that she may be too big to just deliver, and I may have to have a C-section.
Yeah.
So she was born and she was 3.2 kilos. So she's pretty much a full-size baby when she was born.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried.
That's cool.
They had, like, whilst I was waiting for everything to sort of kick in and fully happen, they were like, she will go into the NICU. She will be there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
You will be able to go and see her at any point.
Yeah.
They were like, everything looks good. She may have trouble breathing, but so they were very reassuring, I guess.
Really
and
good.
This isn't what we had with the boys. Like with the boys, it was like, there's nothing we can do. So I think I just took the comfort in, she has this massive chance of survival, and I'm going to cling to that because that's all I've got, basically. So I felt that she was going to be okay. She was. So
it's so nice to hear, because obviously, like, people always talk about pregnancy after loss being mostly anxious ridden, but I think there is also stories where it's like, it doesn't always have to be like that. And like, I feel like I want to be super hopeful in my next pregnancy, and I feel like we always kind of know deep down, like, if something's wrong or not always, but we have that intuition. So I love, like, by the sounds of it, you had your own intuition, but then you also had a great team around you kind of reassuring you and also educating you, like, not just she's going to be fine, but look, she's going to be in NICU, this is why, and explaining all of the things. So you were so well prepared.
Yeah. Like, she was able to be put on my chest when she was born. I got that. And then they were like, we're going to have to take her. I sent Brad, I was like, just go. Like, I'm fine, and I'd rather just know that you're with her. And it sort of, I guess, everything about this birth was mentally easier, physically a little bit, well, not harder, but definitely the birthing part was harder. But yeah, I was able to, I think, just be like, she's okay, Brad's with her, I'll get myself organised, and then I can go be with her. And she, as bad as it is, like, she was the biggest baby in the NICU, and I felt so lucky because the babies in there were, like, to me, they were Archie and Cooper, and they were like similar size, and I was just like, oh, I hope everyone's outcome is great. Like,
Yeah.
but it, as bad as it sounds, it was sort of like, she's got no health problems. I was like, she isn't, the chances of her not making it out were so like,
Yeah.
there was
There was
no
no
reason we would think
Yeah.
that she wouldn't.
Yeah.
So it was, I guess, the way we looked at it was like, she's coming home. Like, we didn't for a second think she wouldn't. And I mean, she was moved from King Eddie's. They would have kept her there if we had wanted to, but because she didn't need the care, we moved hospitals so that she wouldn't, I guess, take up a bed that would be required for a baby that really needed their care. So she spent, I think, 1 week at King Eddie's and then a week at Joondalup. So and then it was, we were able to bring her home. I do think she came early for me as well, because I wasn't worried, but I didn't want her to come on the boy's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And so she was due on the 2nd of May. And the boy's birthday is the 19th of April. So I was like, I don't want that. I'm like, she will be a full-term baby. Like, she can go full-term. And so she ended up coming on the 22nd of March. So she was just like, let's just skip April. We won't make it to May. Like, won't put you through that stress. So I guess that was another thing that sort of made me feel better as well, was knowing that I wasn't going to have to, try and be happy for her and grieve the boys at the same time.
Yeah.
I was able to have time between them.
You had her in your arms for their first birthday.
I did, yes.
Yeah,
and
so
she was,
nice.
she made it home before Easter as well. So she came home over Easter, which I guess took away the how much Easter really sucks for us now, because it was just so focused on her, and we didn't do anything like we didn't celebrate or anything, but it was like she was there, and sort of that distraction was good for that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would have been quite heavily pregnant for Christmas as well by this, not heavily, maybe midway by Christmas.
I was huge. Like, I look at the photos I have, and I know I didn't make it as far with the boys, but I just looked so good when I was pregnant with the boys, and I look back at me when I was pregnant with Emerson, and I'm like, I was just everywhere. Like, I was just a blimp, I swear. And I had friends that were pregnant at the same time, and they just looked so good. And I was like, I looked like I had a watermelon under my shirt, and like, I blew up. Like, I don't know why, because there was no risk of preeclampsia or anything, but I was just a balloon, like swollen ankles. Just
Isn't it funny?
everything.
Isn't it funny how 2 different pregnancies can be so different? Like,
I sort of look back, and I'm just like, I just looked horrible. I'm like, there was no pregnancy glow. Like, it was definitely not there for that pregnancy.
Oh, that's so. But although you can't judge a book by its cover, I used to have everyone going, "Oh, you look so great," and I was like, I feel horrendous. Like, I was so sick, and just like pregnancy's hard. Pregnancy's so hard. Like I think
It is.
we see photos and we're like, oh, that person looks so great, but it's like there's few and far between people that feel great in pregnancy or actually are great.
Well, so my baby shower was the weekend after Emerson was born.
Oh.
So we had planned it, and then I went into labour. So they were like, "Do you want to cancel?" And I was like, "No, let's just do it. Like, you know, it'd be good to sort of show pictures and talk to everyone." So I did go and I got photos with everyone, and I look back and I'm like, just wish that I had like the really protruding belly, because it was it wasn't.
Yeah, of course.
Didn't look pregnant, but I looked terrible, and I was like, "It's not a great photo. I would have definitely preferred to have look pregnant at least."
Yeah.
I don't really look at those photos, to be honest, but
yeah. Oh,
it was
funny.
Not my favorite look that I've ever had. So.
Oh dear. Wow. Well, I'm so happy for you that you got, your beautiful baby girl in your arms. And so she's what, two now? Just turned 2? No, just turned 1.
No, she's just turned 1. So yeah, she's coming up to 1.5.
Yeah.
I feel like I've put a lot of thought in it, and I've heard it a lot on the podcast as well, how people have living children and the people who don't when they lose their child. And I just wanted to say, I guess, like, I have moments where I've been there, I've just been holding Emerson, and I just look at her and I'm just like, would the boys look like this? Like, would they look like you? And, it hurts, but at the same point, it feels like, in a way, you get like a moment where you're just like, it could be them. And if you close your eyes, you're like you can sort of feel like you might be still holding another baby that you love just as much. Yeah. So it's a nice little feeling that you get afterwards. And I really hope that you get that soon, because I think you definitely deserve it. And you'll know when it happens, you'll feel it, and you'll just be like, haha, this is what Lisa was talking about.
Yeah. No, I was going through my photos the other night of Milli, and I haven't laid there and looked at the photos and the videos in such intent in a long time, and because I've always struggled to imagine, because she was so unwell and she looked so unwell, but sometimes when I go back and look at the photos, I can find a couple where she didn't look so sick, and I'm like, oh, that's what your siblings are going to look like, and I do think that they're all going to look the same, and I can imagine holding them and still thinking of her, and so it will be so beautiful.
We look back at pictures of Archie and Cooper, and I'll be like, oh, so the boys were identical, but everyone said oh, Cooper looked more like me, and Archie, I think, looked more like Brad, even though they were the same. Yeah. Pretty much the exact same person. Yeah. But I can see them in Emerson now, and I'm the person who doesn't see people in babies. I'm just someone's oh, they look just like this person. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I'm that person. So for me to be able to see it, I'm it's very special.
And I think also little personality traits as well. Even though they were, so tiny and so new, they still would have had their own little speck of personality in there that you would have seen in them as well, I think.
Oh, I've pretty much, so when I first when we first lost the boys, I started to write little stories for myself and for family about how certain days would be. So it was Father's Day, I wrote a story, and it'd be from the boys' perspective. Yeah. So it'd be them telling the story, but even me and Brad wouldn't be able to understand. They're we'd make these noises, and Mum and Dad wouldn't know what we were doing, type thing.
Yeah.
And I think I already came up with the personalities I believe the boys would have. Like I said, I think that Archie would have been like very brave and strong and very protective. And I think Cooper would just probably be exactly like his dad and just be like a massive shit stirrer, like
super chill, just hanging at the top. I'll just chill out here while Archie does all the fighting for me.
Pretty much. So I feel like I already sort of created personalities, and I guess I have little stories that I'm like, you know, that's, although it didn't happen, it's sort of like a memory that, you know, I've made, but it's something I'll think back of and just be like, well, you know, it's something I have of. Yeah,
they existed, and I think no matter what the gestation, like they I shouldn't say souls all the time because that's just my belief, but like, you know, they have a soul, they had a body, they were birthed, you held them, you carried them, you grew them, you know, then you had all that time with them, you have photos with them, they are Emerson's big brothers, you know, and I just think, yeah, it's beautiful.
And I don't know if it's been mentioned on the podcast, but I had a friend say to me, so when you have a baby, their DNA stays in your body, and then you pass that DNA on to your next baby and so on. So for example, Emerson will have Archie and Cooper's DNA in her body because it was already in mine.
Wow.
So it's like every child you have after loss will have their sibling, a part of their sibling. So
I've seen the it gets sent to me all the time on social media, which is like a big blurb about the DNA of the child being part of the mum, and like even if you have like an injury, that baby's DNA goes to that part of your body to heal you, so your baby continues to heal you for years after. Forever, I believe. And so if I find it, I'll send it to you. I think it's the same thing, but I haven't heard, or I didn't know that it then goes through to the next children, which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been told. I haven't got scientific backing or anything. But
hey, let's be honest, these podcasts never have much backing besides what we just talk ourselves. It's like, yeah, I think it was called this and it was something like this.
Plus, I mean, if it makes you feel better and you want to believe it, then go for it. It's more healing.
Even the part that we just carried them, I mean, whether part of their DNA stays in us or not, they were in us, and I think that's fucking magical within itself.
Yeah, I mean, pregnancy is a crazy thing. Like, I mean, pre-loss, I was like, I can't imagine how this has happened. Like, it's just so bizarre that we're able to do that. And then loss sort of makes you feel a bit shitty about that feeling because you're like, well, don't know why this happens. And then, yeah, but it's so crazy what the body can do, and I'll take anything that reminds me or connects me to my boys. I'll take it.
What do you have any like traditions or anything that you do for the boys, or do you have anything done with their ashes or anything like that?
I don't have anything done with their ashes. I can't part with them. So I've already told my partner that if he's alive when I die, I get mixed with them. I don't care what happens after that. If he wants to hold on to us, he can. Otherwise, if, you know, he passes away and he wants to be included, then we can just be scattered together. But basically,
I'm not scattering Millis either, by the way.
I can't do it. I'm like, I need to be with them always, and they can be scattered when I'm with them. So yeah, that won't happen. I guess for their birthdays, I always make them a birthday cake, and I try to do something for their birthday. So I made so you know how for first birthdays they have like milestone boards? Well, I didn't obviously do much for their first birthday, like, or have the ability to do much for their first birthday. But for their second one, I created a milestone board.
Yeah.
But instead of putting, how many teeth do I have and I can walk and talk and all that stuff, I put things like what we would do if we were here and some of our friends. And I put friends that I've met who also have babies in the stars. I put their babies' names down and
That's so nice.
symbols that they're here with us and sort of that sort of stuff for their second birthday. So I try and do like a little something special. And
yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love how much, like, I feel like the thing I take from you the most on here is that, like, rather than like living in what was lost, like, you seem to talk about where they would be now, like the age they would be at. And I'd like to try to think of that as well. Like, I'm struggling at the moment redoing Milli's room, but I'm like, it's her first birthday next week, and she would probably be getting a fresh room anyway, coming into a big 1-year-old, because obviously there's the guilt of changing her room. But it is also wild to think that it's been a year and her room is still exactly the same. It's kind of crazy. There's no right or wrong, I guess. But yeah, like, so I always think of her growing and her growing with us. And that's what you were saying before. Like, you'd write little things about what they would be doing or what mischief they'd be getting up to or what things they'd be saying. And I love that.
Yeah, I guess, I want to imagine a future where they are here. And for me, being, I guess, never seeing them or thinking of them growing, that sort of doesn't allow me to do that. So I like to think like, what would they do? I can be sitting on the couch, and I used to think, I reckon they would, like, one would be like, I'd be holding Emerson as a baby, and I'd be like, one would be like over one shoulder and one would be on the other side, like trying to look in. And like, I just, always try and imagine like what life would be like if they were here with us as well. So I would like to sort of, I guess, close my eyes.
Yeah, I did. The other night,
what
I
it
was
would
just
be.
like, I just leant down at the oven to pull out like a tray, and it was super hot, and the dog came over, and I was like, Zay, it's hot. And like, for this minute, I pictured that being Milli, because I'd be like, she'd be totally walking over, or at least stumbling to walk over right now. And so often I do that, and I'm still in a stage where it just makes me really sad. But I'm sure as time goes on, those things will make me smile. Like, I put on my story the other day, I was at Bunnings, and we were just watching the paint turn for their house, and I was like, I just imagined her like maybe having a meltdown and having a tantrum, but also being like, look, really, like, getting her to be distracted by the paint at Bunnings. And so it's like, I constantly am thinking of what she'd be doing if she was here.
I don't think it'll ever not hurt, because it is something that you've lost and you won't get, even if you do have more living children. But for me, I find a little bit of comfort in it, because I'm like, well, that's how it would have been. And I'm sort of like, I don't know. I'm like, if there's like a alternate universe somewhere where there is me and the boys somewhere, I'm like, that's what's happening. So there's another version of me that is getting what I don't get.
That's
so
cool.
I kind of think of it like that as well. And I'm like, maybe there's a me that gets to parent my boys somewhere. And
you should read that book that I mentioned at the beginning of the potty, the Midnight Library. That's pretty much what she talks about. It's pretty cool. Like, that also like other like having like having different worlds, and it's pretty cool. A bit different.
Yeah, I'll have to read it.
I think you'll really like it. It's exactly what you were just saying. Like, in a parallel universe, you're living another life, and they're there. But I guess, and this is a really cool part of the book is that yes, in another universe, like, you will have the twins. But in that universe where you've got them, you might lose your husband, or you might lose your parents, or you might lose somebody that's close with you. And that's what the point of her book is that, like, we choose different paths, but somewhere along that path, there is going to be some kind of pain or some kind of something. Like in her brother's a drug addict and dies, or in another parallel, he doesn't talk to her, he doesn't love her. And in another one, he is there and he's still her best friend, but she loses something else. And so it's just this really magical way that she wraps it up of like, what path you've chosen is where you are. and you can wish it was the other one, like we could wish it was the one where Milli lived, but what else would have happened in that? Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you don't get the book until right, like I was kind of reading it like, where is this going? And then right at the end you're like, oh, you get it. But
it's one of those you've got to read it to the end to fully grasp it.
The Midnight Library. Well,
I will do my best to remember that.
I'll send you a photo. I've got your number.
Okay, sounds good.
It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. And just for sharing all and being vulnerable and sharing a space with me. And I know you were nervous, but you did amazing.
Thank you for having me. And I've enjoyed being able to talk about my boys. And it's been nice. I've had, sorry to just keep adding.
No, go for it.
Sort of probably in the year after losing the boys, I felt everything I did to try to honour them or to just do for them just really failed miserably. Like for an example, I brought matching Christmas clothing for me, my partner who refuses to dress the same. So I won that one. My daughter, and I've got 2 teddy bears that I now dress up as for family photos to represent the boys.
Cute.
And I'd ordered, so all matching, I'd ordered them all together. I'd ordered them in August. And it got to November and I still hadn't got them all. So I sort of flagged it, and basically one of the shirts for one of the boys just never showed up. So I didn't have the full set, and I had to go and find somewhere else that had the same one. And I explained the situation, but the company did not really care. So, it was just like, that was just felt really heartbreaking at the time. And I'd ordered a shelf thing to put the boys' stuff on, and I went to pick it up and I was so excited, and the lady at the post office was just so mean and just horrible to me, and I just literally wanted to cry when I left. Like I was just like, why does this keep happening every time I do something for the boys? So this is nice because I get to do something for the boys, and it hasn't just not worked. So it's been so good for me to know that I can do something and it's not been, I guess, tainted by something or someone.
Oh, I'm so glad, and I'm so grateful. And sometimes the podcasts do just fizzle out, they don't work, the Wi-Fi cuts off. So I feel like Archie and Cooper were like, nope, my mum is making this work today. They were definitely
he needs
here.
This.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
You keep doing things for your boys, and I'd love to see photos of Emerson as well.
Yes. Just another one. So I've been a part of a group of mums who have been making memory boxes and miscarriage packs for hospitals.
Yeah.
And we recently just had a memory box day, and I got to make candles. And I made some candles in honor of Archie and Cooper, and it felt really nice to do that as well. It was just having their name on something and hopefully helping someone in their grief as well would be.
I think it's lovely,
really
and I
nice.
think also it, as I know with our Precious Wings box we got from the hospital, it has the name of the baby in there, and I think part of it is just kind of like, you've just lost your baby, you think that you are the only person in the world going through this, and then to open up a box or something with another child's name, you're like, oh, somebody's been through this before me. And I think that's...
Yeah, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I think that's even though you don't want anyone to ever go through it, but you're like, holy shit, this is happening, but also this person is... And then also it's inspirational to go well, that person lost their child, but they now make memory boxes. They now do things in honor of their child. There is light. There is light at the end of this really horrific tunnel.
I struggled a lot when I first lost the boys. I didn't have anyone like anyone I felt that I could go to. I felt like my situation was so isolated compared to others, and I was like, I don't know who to relate to. I don't know who I can talk to, and I really just kind of yearned for, and like it sounds horrible, but I'm a mum who knew what I was going through, someone who'd been through something similar. And it took me a while before I did find people, but I remember I found like Instagram accounts, and it was actually Heart of Harper. I
Yep.
found her account, and it just, I was like, although different, I was like, she had to make a really tough decision, and it kind of made me feel like I wasn't alone in the sense that I felt that I too had to make a really tough decision. So it was like finding people who I could relate to really helped with my, I guess, healing in a sense.
Yeah.
And like now I'm friends with so many mums who, you know, are the same or similar as me, and we can just catch up and we talk about our kids like they're here. Like it feels like a normal thing, just to
Do you
talk
feel
about
like you
your.
connect with more ones that have lost twins, or even if they've like, is that as common as or not?
I don't know too many that have lost twins. But yeah, I have spoken to some, like not in depth. But yeah, I do think for me it would be definitely having twin, like mamas who have lost their twins as well, would be helpful, because I feel like I know on like your podcast you've said you have not been triggered by babies. So when I found out I was pregnant with my boys, my sister-in-law was actually pregnant as well, and so was my cousin, who I'm really close with. And we were all due 2 weeks apart. So I was due first, followed by my cousin, I think, and then it was my sister-in-law. So we were all like so close. So when I had lost the boys, I was like, in a few months, there's going to be babies, and I was like, I don't want to push those babies away. Like I want to love them. And I was like, I sort of said to myself, like, I am going to just accept it. And I did. And like at first, I remember first holding my cousin's son, I was like, oh shit, like, what do I do? But after a little bit, I was like, no, I love him. Like, he's the same age as Archie and Cooper. And, I'm going to look at him and be like, oh, you guys would have been best buddies. Like,
Yeah.
so I kind of like took away from that. Like, I want to love everyone's babies, basically. So I really pushed to not be affected. But then I was in Pilates one day and I heard a lady say that she was expecting twins and it was her first pregnancy. And I was like, oh, get me out of this room. I can't be here. And so I think I've gotten better with it, but it's always been twins that have been sort of my trigger.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why do they pop up at the worst time? Like, I'll be feeling really shitty and I just see someone walk past with twins and I'm like, really? Like, but I also feel so much joy for people who do have their babies. Like, I'm so happy you, touch wood, haven't gone through what I've gone through, and you get to hold your babies. But yeah, for a bit I was like, twins was my trigger.
And it's so crazy. Like, I think I said it in one of the episodes, like the other week I went to IKEA with Crystal, Whitaker's mum. We got in the lift and there was like 4 people in there with babies, and I was the only one there. And I was like, oh, I got out and we kind of laughed. She's like, I don't know how you do that. And I was like, I said, we don't know what each of those people have gone through. you know, and she's like, oh, I never think of that. Like, so when you're seeing somebody walk with twins, like they might have lost a baby before the twins or might have lost one after. And I went for a walk with a girl a couple of months ago. I'd met her through one of the Central Coast Connect baby loss groups. So she birthed twins, and the next day she lost her little girl. So her little boy survived and her little girl died. And unexplained, I guess they would call it SIDS. It was a home birth. And when I went for this walk with her, she said, like, she's obviously so grateful that she has her little boy, but she said, like, people just see me and think I'm the mum of a single baby, but I'm not. I'm a mother of twins, but my other daughter, my other child isn't here. And I guess as people like us, like, I would walk around and see someone with their baby and think how blessed they are, but we don't know that they may have lost that other child. And so it's just like, I always try to remind myself of that whenever I'm triggered or whenever I see something, like, I wonder what their journey is. Like, I'm being triggered by seeing this thing right here, but we actually don't know their story in and around that. And so I guess that's just another complexity of twins, you know, when she birthed 2 full-term healthy babies and then lost one the next day. And then there was another girl in the same group who was also pregnant with twins, and she lost one. She was told the whole time it was high risk, and she lost one, I'm not sure the gestation, but about halfway, and then the other one survived. So then there's this other trauma of losing one part way and the other one surviving, and it's like, just so much.
Yeah. And I guess being different, but sort of when we had the boys, we kind of, as much as we would have loved them to be here, we sort of take comfort that they're together, like they have each other. So it's, yeah, I mean, I was in the NICU with Emerson, and there was a lady, and she had a baby in there as well, like she was with her baby, and it was pretty terrible timing and shitty from the nurse that came up. But the nurse was like, oh, where's her sister? Oh. And she was like, she died. And I was just sitting there and I was like, oh, come on, we need to work on our language, because this lady, her daughter is still in the NICU and she's lost a daughter. She'd be going through hell still. And that's the last thing that anyone needs. Like, yeah. And I remember I heard that and I was like, oh, that hurt me. I was like, just listening to that.
And then, you know, also thinking like that woman wouldn't know that you sitting there had only 12 months earlier lost your twins. You know, like...
I kind of did want to speak to her, but I was like, I won't. Like, I didn't, because I was like, I just don't know what to say. But, yeah, it was...
Did her little baby make it?
I'm not sure, but I think her baby was getting close for release. So I think it must have been quite an early... So with the King Eddies, I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere, but they have like, I think it's 5 different special care nurseries. Yeah, and basically as your child progresses or a spot opens up, your baby, if they're healthy enough, they'll move up. Yeah, and basically the plan is that you will start in the worst and you will get to the one where they're like, your baby's going to be released any minute now.
Yeah.
And she was in the 3rd one with us, but beds weren't really opening up either. So I think that, well, I hope her daughter survived. And based on what I could see, she looked like she was healthy in the sense that she was getting bigger and like she was, I would say, getting close to sort of Emerson's size, so she wasn't super prem or anything by that stage. But once again, you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Milli was 3'4", so she was 3.4 kilos, and like everyone, all the doctors that would come in, like, oh, she's a big girl, because she was in NICU, and like everyone around us was just tiny babies, and it was like, why is this girl so big? She should be healthy and she should be fine, but. They had a similar thing at the Marta because it was like the super premie up one end, and then it kind of worked their way up. So we were in the last room, even though now we obviously know that Milli was going to pass away, but she was, in that kind of last room where the rest of the babies were kind of going home from there. I actually had a girl reach out to me a couple of weeks ago on Instagram, and she's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know. Darcy, can you close the door? I can just hear you. She reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, and she said she was actually in the room at Pindara in the NICU when we got rushed in there with Milli. Like, so she was in there with her little girl, or her little boy, maybe her child. And it just like spun me out to think someone was there like witnessing all of that. And she was like, oh my gosh, I was just hoping that everything was okay. And like, I don't know, she must have found me through my OB's page or something. But yeah, like a year later, she's reached out to say like, I was there and I saw this and I watched this, and like there was nothing bad. It was just more like, I was just hoping you guys were okay, but I kind of knew it wasn't. So yeah, I was just thinking of you then. I'm like, I wonder if you could find that lady just to see if her baby was okay. Like, has she ever checked in at the hospital, or, you know, because it was just, bizarre.
Who knows?
Yeah, true, because she lost one. It's crazy. You're in WA.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know who would find it.
I do. I'm the same as you. I try to sort of look at people and be like, I don't know what they've gone through. I don't know why, you know, they might be acting a certain way. So it's like, just, you know, it's not ill intent, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
But then there's something that really shits you when you're like really nice to people and then they're really rude and you're just like, mate, you have no idea. Just leave.
Yeah, I was really rude to the instructor in yoga the other day because she triggered me so hard at the beginning of the class. But I was like, when I say I was rude, I just didn't say anything, whereas normally I'm like, and I just thought, oh, I just want to say something, but I can't. I'm going to do a post about it on social media because it was, you know how at the beginning of a class they like, does anyone have any injuries or is anyone pregnant? That's all they have to say, right? People either say yes or no. She was like, oh, it's always strange asking if people are pregnant because, you know, some people don't want to talk about it. And like, literally, and I'm thinking, just shut up, just stop. Because like we had a miscarriage 2 weeks earlier and 2 days later I was going in for my endometriosis surgery. So I'm like sitting there thinking I should be pregnant. I'm not. I'm in yoga, which I have not been pretty much all year, but I'm here like just to kind of get my head space before this surgery. And she's like, if anyone doesn't want to tell me they're pregnant, just pretend it's an injury. Pregnancy is like an injury. Like, and I was just thinking, just stop talking. It was like she was digging herself a hole, but she didn't know she was digging it. And so then the whole class, and then she sits down, she's like, how is everyone? Is everyone great? And I was like, no. She was like, oh, well, in an hour you'll be better. And the whole class, I was just like, why would you talk about pregnancy like that? Why would you say it's an injury? Why would you make jokes about it? She's clearly never experienced loss. Then I was thinking about Milli's injuries at birth. Like I spiraled and I like thought I was going to have a panic attack in yoga. And but then at the same time, I was also like, I just need to say something to her at the end and just be like, hey, like, do you have kids? Have you ever experienced loss? You know, at the beginning of a class, like I literally have hardly been here all year. I'm finally back. And you've just made this joke that, yes, maybe I'm sensitive, but you've just triggered me heavily. There's 12 women in this class. How do you know that any of us aren't going through certain things? Like, it just can be a question. If anyone has an injury or if anyone's pregnant, please just let me know. Come talk to me. Put your hand up. Let's get the class started. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, my Pilates, when they do it at the beginning, they're just like, if anyone has an injury or anything we should know about, just let us know.
Perfect.
And that's it. They don't ask anything else.
No, it shouldn't be a question.
I mean, you can tell, like, you'll then see pregnant people and they'll go over because some of the classes are pregnancy friendly, and
most of them,
they don't.
We know if we're pregnant at what gestation we need to tell an instructor. Usually, people or like we're not silly. We know we fill in the form before we enter the class if we've just joined the gym or whatever it is. Like, I just don't think it needs to be. It can be a statement, not a question, and don't embellish it. Like, don't keep talking about it. Like, I was so triggered. Anyway, That was a me thing.
I don't think I would have handled that well either.
No, and then I just felt like, what if there's anyone else in this room that's been triggered by that? What's other people's stories? Like, my brain just went everywhere. And I left I worked in mainstream gym for 7 years, and I was in that industry for 9 years. So I'm not unaccustomed to the way that the gyms work and stuff. But when I was first pregnant with Milli, I went and I was like, obviously pregnant, and this instructor was like, okay, so I'm going to do some things different for you. And I was like, thanks. So then throughout the whole class, she was like, okay, if you're pregnant, do it like this, and if you're not pregnant, do it like this. And I was like, oh my God, like, if I was in that room and I wasn't pregnant, I would have left. I would have been bawling my eyes out. Like, if you're not pregnant, stretch like this, or if you're not pregnant, do this exercise. I was like, you can't say that. And so then I left the mainstream gym because I was pregnant and I felt like I was triggering other people, and I went and joined a mums and bubs group in a private park up here. I don't know. I just, like, my brain doesn't just think about me, but it's also like thinks about everyone else in the room and like how other people might be handling that and how I would have handled it. And I'm just like, how are more people not aware of their surroundings?
Yeah, it's like I hadn't thought about it like that, but I didn't really attend too many classes when I was pregnant with the boys. I'd been attempting to go to Pilates, but I just hadn't actually committed, and then we'd sort of lost the boys. So I committed after I found out I was pregnant with Emerson, and even then it was like I'd go into the classes and I just, like, even if I saw pregnant people, I was like, oh, I wonder if any of you know what I'm going through. And I used to, like, just the drive to get there would just have me so emotional because I'm like, they don't know. None of them know. And it would always be like, even now that I've got Emerson, I drop her off at creche and I'd have, like, people say, oh, you know, such and such is having her 4th baby. And I was like, I have 3. Like, you know, you see 1, but I have 3. And, like, you know, it's just, yeah, society just, it doesn't know how to, I guess, like, where, you know, you can't say this, you can't say that, but then they don't think about other things that would hurt people. And it's like, no issues talking about anything that's positive because that can't hurt anyone. It's like it does sometimes.
Yeah, that's so true.
Who can't hear those things. Like, for me, when I was in that class and I heard the lady talk about being pregnant with twins, I was like, I just want to go up to her and be like, make sure they check this, make sure they check that. I was like, I'll probably freak her out. And I was like, and to be honest, I just want this class to be over so I can leave. I don't want to be here. And then I just broke down in the car on the drive home because I was like, I just wasn't expecting that. I wasn't prepared for it. And yeah, it broke me. Yeah. And that was happy news. There was nothing, like, they weren't even talking to me. I could just hear it. Like, I mean, I was in a pregnancy friendly class because I was, you know, had sort of had a baby and didn't want to push myself too much. But yeah, it was not ideal.
I know. And then just think about how many conversations you've been in where somebody, like, could have just overheard something and been triggered, and just, like, it's just everyone's got their own triggers, not just in the baby loss world. Like, it's just, we never know what conversation is going to trigger a thought or an emotion or a smell, or, you know, and I'm sure it's never going to end. You know, I think we're always going to have those moments.
Yeah, I think we just, like, everyone just needs to be a bit more mindful about everything. Like, don't talk about something that could be really hard for people to hear as well. Like, you know, it's hard.
Yeah. I guess it's also hard as well because, like, so we were at a surf comp, I don't know, must have been the beginning of the year, and we were there watching one of Dylan's friends compete, and then one of another girl came up that we knew, that we'd met before, and her partner's name was Dylan, and I know that since we met her, he had died in a motorbike accident. and my partner's name is Dylan. And we were standing there and we were chatting, and I said, "Oh, how are you?" And I said, and she kind of implied that she didn't think I knew what had happened, but I had seen it. And I said, I said, I sent you a message, but I'm sure you got lost in all the grief and stuff. I said, I understand. People say that they messaged me and I don't remember. And she kind of looked at me like, what do you mean messaged you about what? And then I said, oh, she goes, last time I saw social media, she'd gone off social media. Last time I saw you were pregnant and getting married. And I was like, oh, we lost our little girl. And she was like, what? Like, couldn't believe it. Anyway, we sat down, we had a beautiful conversation. But then Dylan came up and put his arm around me and was like cuddling me and kissing me and stuff. And I was like, I got really awkward and kind of stepped away because I was like, she must be so triggered by that. Her partner, whose name is Dylan, but also just, a loving partner, has died. And even though we've gone through loss and it's awful, I was cautious of triggering her with Dylan coming up and cuddling me. And so it's like, we never know what's going to trigger somebody. We don't know people's stories all the time. Like, I get triggered by people having beautiful parents because I don't have that, But so we never know what we're going to say that's going to trigger someone. Something that I like, that I share all the time on social media is Dylan being funny and loving and kind and all those things. That could be so triggering to somebody who's single or doesn't have that or has an asshole husband, but yet that I'm triggered by babies and all the other things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's no way for us to not trigger people in general. But I think in terms of something like a fitness instructor who's running a class of predominantly women where people go for mental health and physical health and emotional health, that's where you need to be more aware of things like pregnancy, baby loss, injury, whatever it might be. Those places we definitely have control over saying things that could be offensive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm a bit the same. Like if I like even talking about Emerson and her surviving in this podcast, it feels a bit hard because, there's people who don't have that, yourself as well. And it brings me joy that I have her. But as much as it may not, anger anyone to the point that they're like, well, that's bullshit and I should have that, it would still hurt. It still isn't going to feel nice. And, it's my story, and I came on here to share that, but I still do feel like sorry to anyone who that does upset.
But I also asked you to talk about this, and I think maybe in the beginning I didn't always go into pregnancy after loss or even just other babies because maybe I wasn't in the space to know those things, but I love hearing about it now, and that's why I do ask the question, what was it like? Because you've actually inspired me to think that pregnancy after loss doesn't just have to be filled with anxiety. Of course, you had extra scans and whatever, but you went through and even had a preemie baby and she was in NICU and it was still all okay. And so it was actually so nice to hear you talk about her and to, we all want to hear about healthy babies. And yes, it's fucking hard. Like I have Milli's first birthday next week and I don't have a baby in my arms and I was meant to be 11 weeks pregnant and I'm not. And so, all those things are hard, but it doesn't mean I'm not happy for you and love that you have Emerson and that you had her for the boy's first birthday. I love all that for you.
Yeah. Well, I have everything crossed and I hope that I hear good news. I'm not going to lie, when I did hear your news, the good news, that you were pregnant, I told my partner straight away. I was like, one of the ladies I follow on Instagram, she's pregnant, and I was so excited. And you already are, but you will make an absolute great mum to your earthside children, just as you do to Milli and her little siblings above.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate it so much. Well, I hope to share good news with you very soon. I'm going to actually jump off and record my final podcast with probably all of the updates that we have. Not that there's anything too exciting. It's all the shit and the shambles, but So your episode is going to be up this Sunday, the last interview of the season, and then my final one will be up the week after with kind of like where we're at and what we're doing and all the other things. So thank you for following and loving and sharing and all the things.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely listen to the last one, and I'll probably be stalking your Instagram.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll make sure I go on. I don't know if I'm following you back yet, but I'll go on and have a stalk myself and see photos of the boys and Emerson.
Well, I've got 2 Instagrams. I've got just my personal one, which probably does have just more of Emerson, because I don't think people like on there would. I guess it's one of those accounts I've had since I was young. So I've got people that I don't even speak to on there, and I don't know, I felt like it was just too, in a sense, personal, and I just didn't want to post things and have any negative feedback from people in that sense.
Yeah.
So I created a second one, which was just more about the boys. I'm terrible with social media, so there's hardly ever posts. I was
going to say, if there's any twin mums, like lost mums, that want to connect with you, is that the page that they should connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. And like I'm big on happy to catch up with people, and like we have a group of us that catch up like once a month, and it's the lady who organises it. She posted on all of the pages like in Perth on like Facebook that are sort of around loss, and
I really hope that lady reaches out to you from the one that had the 2 little girls and them. Imagine if she did.
Yeah, that would be nice.
You have to keep me posted.
I think I will if I do hear, I will let you know. But yeah, I think for me it was so hard not having someone, and also in the twin space, like just not that it hurts any less if you just lose one baby, but just someone who knows you, like your experience a bit better, was always hard. And like I have now met twin mamas, and haven't got to know them super, super well, but obviously over time I will. And like I tend to be that person, I remember everyone's babies before I remember their names. So someone would say something and I'm like, oh yes, I don't remember what mum's name is, but I remember them. And like I'm sort of big on, like I try my best to, even if no one sees it, I try to remember like anyone I come across, their babies. And like there was I believe it was Wren, and they had painted her nails, I think. And I listened to the podcast and I Googled like hot pink nail polish, and I found the nail polish and then I checked that it was the same one on the podcast, and I was like, I just want to buy it and wear it, because I just like the fact that even though no one here, like you might not know, but like there's someone who might just be walking around with like, something that is for your baby. You don't know it, but
beautiful.
So I try to do stuff like that as well. Like I always
that's just so nice.
I just want everyone's kids to be remembered the way that I want mine to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I'll let Wren's parents know that I'm sure, I don't know if they listen to all the episodes, but I'm sure that they will. I'll let them know, because I think that's beautiful.
Yes, I feel that there is something about just knowing that someone somewhere is thinking about your child, and that'll just bring comfort. And, hopefully with this podcast, there'll be someone who, might hear about twins and just think, oh, Archie and Cooper.
Absolutely.
And, even if they don't remember my story or me, there's probably going to be someone who just remembers their names, and that's enough for me.
I love that. I love that.
And the amount of Milli things I see, I see them. I think of you every time.
I love it. I get so many messages, and even if I don't get the messages, I know that people are still doing it at 11:11 or a pink sunset or a rose on the path or something like that. It's super nice. I love that.
Yeah.
Makes us not feel so crazy. What's your sign for the boys? What am I going to see besides twins that would make me think of?
Well, we've got, so I guess we're pretty, usual. We've got butterflies are our sort of thing, and white roses. So when we'd lost the boys, I went and brought a white rose plant, and I planted it, and every time, like, it's right outside our kitchen window, so every time it has new, like, roses on it, we're like, oh, the boys roses have roses, like,
Yeah,
and they
that's
smell
nice.
amazing. So yeah, those, I think there's just, those are
See
our
them in
main ones,
everything.
I
Yeah.
guess.
We just replanted our rose bush because we're getting our whole front area ripped up and a new driveway put in, and it was right where the Milli plant had been planted the year before. It was the year before I even had her that we got that plant given, but it did not bud until she was born, which was crazy. And so we've just repotted it, and I'm just like, please grow back. Like, I'm scared that we might have ruined the roots or something, but I'm sure she will at the right time.
Yeah, maybe right when there's some good news.
I hope so. Well, I'll keep you posted.
Like I said, I'll stalk your Instagram.
I'll send you a text in a moment, and if you want to reply with your Instagram handle, and then I'll pop it in the show notes. And so if anyone wants to find you or follow you or chat to you, then they will be able to find you that way.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you as well, and I appreciate everything you've done in this space.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Chat soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Little Life, Big Loss. If you are here because you've experienced baby loss recently or a long time ago, I am so sorry. If you have never experienced the loss of a baby, but you're here to learn, thank you. If you're here because you have just had the news that you have to make some really tough decisions, I am so sorry. I hope these podcasts give you the help and the guidance that you need. If any of today's conversation has triggered any uneasy emotions for you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or lifeline.org. Another organisation working specifically with pre- and postnatal depression and anxiety is PANDA, PANDA. You can find them at panda.org.au. And remember that postnatal depression and anxiety does not discriminate. It can affect both men and women, mums and dads. Please seek help from your GP, psychologist, your local hospital, a midwife, OB, Lifeline, or Panda. I love you and I miss you, my Milli.